double down on your 20%. Do what you have to do so you can put all of your energy on that 20%. That's how you're going to have a company that runs without you, more profitable, and you can scale it. And I would go as far as to say that's the only way you're going to do it, is by doubling down on your 20%. Hey guys, Todd here from the Construction Leading Edge podcast, and this is a first. We have the Construction Leading Edge team on here. We have Leyah Hostetter, who recently picked up a new last name. Congratulations on getting married recently.
Thank you.
Leyah. Leyah is our Director of Customer Success. Then we have Monish Khadye, who is a client turned coach. He's the famous 8-hour workweek guy. He may write a book. He should probably write a book, sort of like the 4-hour workweek that made Tim Ferriss famous. You could write the 8-hour workweek. So we're glad to have Monish on the team. So Monish, I'll let you take it away. This episode was your idea to have a roundtable discussion about this topic. So I'll let you take it away and talk about the topic and set this up.
Sure. So I tend to read a lot. I love reading a lot of business and personal development books. I'm sure a lot of our listeners do as well. And I came across this book a couple months ago. It's 10X is Easier Than 2X by Dan Sullivan with Dr. Benjamin Hardy. They've got a couple other books previously released as well. It only came out in, I think, at the end of May this year. It's a brilliant book in terms of goal setting and the wealth of knowledge in terms of psychology as well as to how to change your mindset moving forward, as most of us construction business owners kind of need. And I got a lot of gems out of that. I've shared it with a lot of our clients and people are just raving about it. And I felt it was, we're not affiliated with the book, but I felt it was necessary that we kind of share that, or at least some sections of the book with people. And I encourage you to go and pick up a copy yourself. I'm sure you'll find it quite helpful. Even if you're not a construction business owner, if you're doing whatever else, the book's fantastic, even for your personal lives as well. And I figured it'd be interesting to, every time I've spoken to someone about the book, they've told me about their favorite sections and we've had a discussion about that, which has been fantastic. So I wanted to do that with you guys on the podcast. So Todd, what was your favorite part of the book?
Well, I have to say this is the first book report I've been assigned in a long time, and I think Leyah's probably the same way. But I had heard about the book a couple of times, and I really appreciate you bringing it up. I actually got to read it on vacation, had a little more time on my hands because the first day of vacation on the beach, I cut my foot, got 18 or 20 stitches in it, like in the first 3 hours or so on the beach. So I had lots of time to rest. And fortunately, I brought this book with me. And there were there's a lot. There's a lot in this book. It is jam-packed with stuff. And this is the kind of book that, for me, I had to read a chapter and then put it down, think about it, and go back and pick up another chapter. It just has so much advice. And there are two things that really jumped out at me that were really impactful for me and have been impactful for our clients. And the first one is the title. The title, 10X is easier than 2X. And I'm not sure I agree with that statement. It's catchy. I'm not sure I agree with it. But his explanation of why 10X is easier than 2X is interesting. And I'll just paraphrase or read an excerpt here from his explanation. He talks about a situation where he was at this mastermind event, and the facilitator said, he asked this question to the group: if you wanted to improve your profits by 10%, how would you do it? And one of the people in the group took a few minutes and eventually said, you know what, this is actually a really bad question. And here's what he said in response to the question: if you wanted to improve profits by 10%, how would you do it? He said, there are literally infinite things I could do to grow my profits by 10%. The goal just isn't big enough to create focus and specificity. If, however, you ask me, if you wanted to grow your profits by 10 times, how would you do it? That would be a much better question, because there are likely to be very few, maybe even only one way to create 10x growth. Almost nothing you're currently doing would get you there. To separate the signal from the noise, you need to make the goal big enough to weed out most paths or strategies. Impossible goals help you identify the one or the few conditions that have the highest possible upside. Those are the areas to focus your scarcest resource, your limited attention, on. And the author went on to say, seemingly impossible or massive goals are highly practical because they immediately separate what works from what won't, illuminating the few paths that have the greatest efficacy. And that really stood out to me. Like, well, that makes perfect sense. If you wanted to increase something by 10%, there are dozens, if not hundreds of ways to do that. And then you have to pick one, try it, run with that, pick another one, run with that, experiment with it. But if you have a 10x goal, there are likely just a few, maybe even one thing that will get you there. And that narrows your focus, so it's simpler. This is where I'm not sure I agree with the title. I think it's simpler. 10x is simpler because it narrows your focus. And it's like, well, there are only 2 or 3 things you can do instead of 36. So it's much simpler. You have a much higher chance of making it happen. So that was pretty insightful for me. And it made me think about how a lot of times we look at limitations and constraints as bad things. But constraints are actually good. I heard somebody say this recently. You should embrace your constraints because that's what drives innovation. Constraints drive innovation. So these constraints that you're working within, you need to embrace them. And the authors are saying you need to push your goals out to the outer limits of what's possible, out beyond your constraints. And it's really what's going to force you to think 10x and therefore make it simpler or easier. And
well, I might, sorry to interrupt, but I might just challenge you there. You know, when you're saying that the title may not feel enough, the message I got from there is if you want to increase your profit by 10%, let's say, or even, double your revenue, the approach I've taken in the past is this is my goal. It's attainable by me just working harder, or working for longer, right? So all of a sudden I'm doing 60, 70 hour weeks because it's easy to get to. But if I go, actually, I want to 10x my revenue, it's just not possible, right? There's not enough hours in my day, not enough hours in my week. And so you go, well, that's only possible by me using someone else's time, scaling time and hiring someone else. So in a way, it does, to me, that makes sense that it's actually easier for me because I could work a whole lot less. And obviously, there's risks in terms of hiring someone and things like that. But the point of contact is completely different compared to me just sitting at my desk or, me making phone calls or whatever the case might be. It's about me hiring the right people and stuff like that. So yeah. In terms of time, that's how I saw it.
Yeah, that's a good point because you could theoretically just work a few more hours. You could work harder. You could do more, try to just do more of the same thing to get incrementally higher. Yeah, I see that. I see your point there. I see your point. Yeah. So it's definitely simpler, and it could actually be less work. And that's what I've seen. There's a myth that I've run into quite a bit with our clients and people we talk to, which is if I grow my company, it's going to mean more stress for me.
I used to say that too. Yep.
Yeah, I think you said that. When we were working together, you were like, nope, growth is bad. No thanks. Growth means more headaches. But when it's done well, you're actually distributing that load to other people, and you can have more people on the team, grow your team, and have less work. We've seen that over and over and over. People are growing their team, having more income, more freedom, less stress, by growing their team. And I think that holds a lot of people back. So yeah, thanks for pushing back on that. I appreciate the pushback.
I think it could be simple and easy, but there's also the flip side to that, right? I think in the simplicity is that you take away the noise of the thousands of options to maybe potentially get you to a 2x, where if your goal is a 10x, there's only one or two pathways there. And so that simplifies a lot of things. And I think that also makes it easier, but also, and he brings this up in here too, it's not just about reaching a 10x goal. It's you as a person transform to create the success in that 10x goal. And I don't think that's always easy. And I'm sure we'll get into that.
Right.
But, I think there's probably a few different words you could use, but definitely appropriately named, but also probably some other words that could have plugged in with that as well.
Yeah. Lots of discomfort involved.
Definitely.
And that leads me to the next thing where he talks about this framework. He calls it a 10x versus 2x framework. And I'll read what he said about this. I've used this quite a bit. This is just a fantastic framework to use personally, as a business owner, with your team, so many things. So here's the 10x versus 2x framework. Put simply, if you're going for 2x growth, then you can keep or maintain 80% of your existing life or what you're now doing. And in fact, when you're going for 2x or linear growth, that's exactly what you're doing. 2x is operating from the past, primarily continuing the path you've already been on. 2x is linear. You're not doing anything radically different. You're mostly just trying to do more of what you're now doing with as few changes as possible. 10x is the opposite of 2x. This is what really stood out to me. Going for 10x requires letting go of 80% of your current life and focus and going all in on the crucial 20% that's relevant and high impact. So there's a graphic here that shows like your life and what you're doing. And there's the 80% of existing and 20% new. And if you want to get to 10x, you have to be willing to let go of the 80% and double down on the 20%. But what that means to me is your ability to get to the next level is directly proportional to your ability to let go of things in the right way. I'm going to say that again because this concept of letting go is very uncomfortable for a lot of our clients. Your ability to get to the next level is directly proportional to your ability to let go of things in the right way. So you have to be willing to let go of the 80% that got you there, the 80% that you're currently doing, and double down on the 20% of the things that you should be doing. So another way of saying that, which this is a kind of a cliche, but what got you to this point won't get you to the next level. What got you here won't get you there. And we see this a lot. A lot of people, a lot of business owners, they have grown their business to a certain point, wearing several hats, maybe all the hats. They're doing sales, they're doing estimating, running operations, running finances, and they're just doing it all. And they struggle to let go of control because they're afraid. And we've gone through this exercise several times in live meetups at events. There's this fear that I can summarize as a statement: new employees are a threat. That's what keeps people from letting go. So if you are afraid of letting go of control, then you're going to stay right where you're at. All you can do is work harder, work more hours, just try to do more of the same. But if you want to get to the next level, you have to let go of control. You have to let go of things in the right way. So we've seen a couple of examples of this. One guy that comes to mind is Michael Moore. And he was on the podcast in episode 275, but he was wearing all the hats in his business. They do hardscapes in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and he was running operations, heading up sales, estimating, finance, wearing all the hats. And he was stuck. Profits weren't where they needed to be. Stress level was really high, working lots and lots of hours, couldn't grow. And he let go of control of operations, brought in a key employee to run operations for him. He realized running operations is in my 80%, and I need to let go of control of that. And he focused on his 20%, which is sales. And he also brought in somebody to take over and lead up estimating as well, so he could focus on what he's really good at. And as a result, revenues are an all-time high, backlogs at an all-time high, profits are at an all-time high, and he has a lot more time and a lot more freedom on his hands. What I like about this framework is you can look at your life, you can look at your business and say, if I want to get somewhere, what are the 20% of activities that lead to 80% of the results? And this 80-20 principle applies almost universally. What are the 20% of activities that I'm the best in the world at, where I'm operating in my genius, and I just love doing? And then let's focus on those things and then delegate or automate or eliminate the other 80% and double down on that 20%. And this is something we're seeing in our CEO Alliance members, is they're focusing on getting out of certain parts of their business and focusing on being the visionary or focusing on sales so they can really double down on their 20%. So I love that this 80-20 framework. So I'm curious for you guys, what would you say are some 80% activities that a lot of construction business owners are spending time on? The things that are gobbling up a lot of time, not producing a lot of results, that they need to eliminate or delegate. What about you, Monish? What was in your 80%?
Well, I think most of my stuff was, again, we identified quite later on that I'm more suitable to the visionary mindset. I'm not an integrator, but I was stuck doing a lot of the integrated things because, like, you know, I said, if you have incrementally higher goals, you just work harder to get there. But part of that is you just do everything, which I now realize didn't make sense looking back then. But one of probably the worst things I used to do was doing free estimates because it just chewed up so much of my time. I had, I think, a conversion rate of 1 in 5. And even then, you know, I'd done so much work for free, and there's usually value engineering. It's not just a straight bid. Like, you're trying to value engineer, you're trying to build that relationship, you're solving problems on the fly if you haven't done the design and things like that. And it was just unnecessary. And that was a big turning point for me. And going through the book, they talk about, you know, you talk about 80-20 and let's focus on the 20% that brings you value. But what I've also picked up is part of that 80% is setting minimum standards and eliminating a lot, not just delegating, but eliminating. So one quote from the book, Dan Sullivan has this 4 C's principle, right? And a quote from the book is, evolving yourself to the level of a higher minimum standard requires commitment and courage, which eventually leads to the development of new capabilities and confidence. And the example they gave in the book was a bloke named Chad Willardson, who at 24 years old was accepted as a financial advisor for the training program at Merrill Lynch. And they go through and describe in detail how Chad basically kept setting and raising his minimum standards, right? And they were in terms of dollar values. So the portfolio values for his clients. And he'd say, well, I'm doing this well. I'm going to set a new standard, a new standard, a new standard. And, you know, I think as a general contractor or a remodeler or whatever construction business you've got, there's always this fear that if you don't say yes to everything that pops up, that eventually you're gonna run out of business. And, you know, we've all been there. It's just a constant thing because you're just trying to build this pipeline. And when I first started charging for estimates, after I sold my first pre-construction services agreement, and how much value it was mutually, not just to me, like in terms of getting paid, but because I was being paid, I was able to deliver a better service to that client. As soon as I saw that, I just went, I'm never doing a free estimate again. But I set that, without knowing this whole minimum standards thing, I set that as No one is going to get another free estimate out of me. I'm not doing any favors or whatever. And, that then led to the new minimum standard, not just being I'm not doing free estimates, but I'm only going to do pre-construction services for this specific demographic of client, for this specific project type that we work really well with and we know we can knock out of the park, right? We have a process. We've worked out what our pre-construction process is and how to get from A to B, deliver the best value for the client in pre-construction, get paid for that part. And then we've got the next phase, which is construction. Again, we know exactly how to get from B to C with the same results every single time. So we just narrowed in on that and we nearly doubled our revenue. And obviously our profitability went up too, because being able to charge for pre-construction meant that I could hire a pre-construction manager. And I got to get rid of something I hated the most, which is estimates. Just hated it. And all of a sudden, like my fear was always in terms of failure. Like I don't want to lose a bid. So I'd underprice the bid myself. I'd shoot myself in the foot basically, right? And as soon as I gave it away to someone and I set the expectation that, this is our markup, we want to make sure everything's covered in. All the bids went in appropriately priced and we won every single bid that my pre-construction manager did. And not just that, but we got paid for that time. So her time was covered, again, because of the service that we were providing. But that is what setting that standard eventually led to me being so freed up that I did eventually have an 8-hour work week. But if I hadn't done that, I'd still be doing free estimates today. It was basically setting that as a benchmark and going, no, never going that again. And as we kind of kept working through, we'd get leads all the time and we said, all right, this is the minimum value of projects we're going to do, because anything smaller is just a bit too clunky on site. We just can't get that 100% right. Let's just drop it. Let's let it go and let's focus on these type of projects that we're doing really well. And when we started doing that, again, the results were fantastic. And our clients kept then referring us to similar clients with similar project types and things like that. So we never once we set those minimum standards, we never went back to those categories. And it was ironic because once we focused on that 20%, we were getting more leads than we ever did before. And we never marketed. So it was quite amazing that when you just focus on 20% and you deliver exceptional results, then it's giving you that 80% that although you were chasing, you weren't really getting them to begin with.
So counterintuitive, isn't it? Because there's the fear of, well, if I say no to something, I will miss out. And the best business decision you can make is to say no to the wrong clients and the wrong project types. And that is, it's such an irrational fear that holds people back.
Yep.
That, well, I've heard this a lot. I'm at the point where I've decided that we're going to declare war on free estimates because it's at the root cause. It's the root cause of so many problems. That's a whole different podcast episode, but there's so much fear around that. If I do that, I'll run out of work. Like, well, that's irrational. And it's the same thing with, what if I say no to somebody who wants me to do this $500 job? Will I miss out? No, you won't. It's so counterintuitive, but it is been proven over and over and over and over. Focus on your 20%, double down on your 20%, and it's focus on higher paying clients, charge a premium, deliver value, and do what's counterintuitive, right? If you do what everybody else is doing, you're going to get what everybody else is getting. And just about everybody else is doing the 80%. So if you're looking around and you're doing what everybody else is doing, you're going to get what everybody else is getting. Yeah.
Yep.
So
and that's why, one of the things that you said then is value, like focus on value, right? So I'll give you an example, because just before we were on one of our group calls and one of our clients was telling us that he's got that fear where he's not too sure, and he's been doing smaller projects so far, and he wants to break out into the larger market. And he's been approached by a client that in their words, want to build a nice new home on the water in their area. And the budget's probably going to be between $1.5 to $2 million for this home. And they've invited him to bid against 2 other competitors. And, the drawings are there, the initial phases of the drawings, but there's no selections, there's no detailing, nothing. And I was like, how can you even submit a proper bid on that? You just can't. And you're not going to, no one's going to be apples for apples. And as I was saying to him, this is a good opportunity for you to provide value to the clients in terms of you saying, hey, you've got your pre-construction is probably about 40% complete so far. I can help you finish the remaining 60%. We do charge for that. And hopefully if our relationship works out, we can continue to do the build for you as well. And he had a lot of fear that, they might just say no to him to begin with. And I said, well, if someone with a $2 million budget doesn't want to spend 5, 10, 15,000 on making sure that their design, their selections are accurately finished and hiring the right contractor, they're probably making their decision based on value. Based on cost, and not value. Probably not the best client for you. You have to separate that whole, wow, $2 million, this is going to be great, to this client doesn't actually want to pay that because they're not even paying for pre-construction. And on the other hand, we've had clients that have approached us because we've done jobs for their friends or family or whatever. They call us and they are determined to work with us because we provide value. And they don't, obviously they have a budget, but they know that we're not ripping them off or anything like that. There's no fears, right? So when I explain this here, pre-construction, they go, it's a no-brainer. And I've been at the tail end of jobs where my clients have said, it's funny, when we first engaged you, you charge, I charge people to go out and meet them. I won't even leave my house unless someone's paying me because I value my time. And my clients had said to me at the end of their project that their friends and family thought they were fools for paying, a builder to come out just to meet them and go through the initial, then paying for pre-construction. And my client said, well, it's funny because during construction, they would catch up with us and they would try to find out what's the gossip, what's gone wrong. How are these guys stuffed up? Tell us the bad stuff. And my clients were like, we've got no bad stuff. These guys gave us a schedule for pre-construction, which they followed. Then they gave us a schedule for construction, which they followed pretty much to the day, which we were only able to do because we did pre-construction. We had all our selections, order all our long lead materials. And my clients got to the end of it and they go, it's funny, all these people that were saying, you guys are full are now asking me for your details because they'd like to hire you guys. And I said, well, and if there have been clients that have contacted us that I've said, no, we're not going to pay you for that. I'm okay with that because they're not the right clients for us.
Right. It's the best way to filter out the 80% of clients you don't want to work with, in my opinion. So if you're listening to this and you're like, what? People get paid for estimates? Oh my gosh, I'm spending 40, 60, 80 hours a month on free estimates that don't go anywhere. Then go to constructionleadingedge.com/get paid. Watch our free training. We're actually giving away a tremendous amount of resources for the war on free estimates. We are giving away weapons. I had somebody tell me, be an arms dealer. So not literally, figuratively, be an arms dealer, just in case. This doesn't involve IEDs and drones or anything like that, but sales scripts, convincing you of the value. So if you want to do that, go get your hands on those resources at constructionleadingedge.com/get paid, GETPAID. Speaking of the 80%, the other things that I've seen that fall into that 80% of time that construction business owners are spending, and they're not really going anywhere, firefighting, dealing with day-to-day fires, getting called out to job sites, dealing with problems, answering the same question over and over and over, or answering all the questions because it's all in their head, solving all of the problems, working with the wrong customers, doing projects that are too small. putting up with employees they should have fired a long time ago, just that kind of stuff. So that's that 80% framework. The 80-20 framework is so powerful, and it just shines a light on, all right, this is what I need to do. This is if you can get clear on your 20%, double down on your 20%. Do what you have to do so you can put all of your energy on that 20%. That's how you're going to have a company that runs without you, more profitable, and you can scale it. And I would go as far as to say that's the only way you're going to do it, is by doubling down on your 20%. So those are the two things that really stood out to me. How is it possible to be easier? How it's possible for 10x to be easier because it limits the options, and that 80-20 framework.
Hey, it's Todd here, and we have a couple of free resources that we want to get in your hands. First is our free training video, Get Out of Your Construction Business, How to Make It Run Without You this year. Here's what you're going to get when you sign up for this free training video. You'll learn about the JETS thinking trap, which stands for just enough to start. That's probably keeping you stuck working in your business, and it keeps you stuck in firefighting mode, and it affects probably 90% of construction businesses. You'll also learn about the first few crucial steps you want to take if you want to spend more time working on your business instead of being stuck working in it. And you'll learn what nailing the handoff looks like and how it will help you eliminate 80% of your preventable schedule delays and profit bleeds. You can get your hands on that free video over at constructionleadingedge.com/get out. constructionleadingedge.com/GETOUT. And the second thing is a question. Here's a question. Is your business structured for success, or is it designed for failure? We found a study and found that there are 5 root causes of contractor failure, 5 primary reasons that successful contractors self-destruct. All right. This is information that we feel like every construction business owner should know about. You should know about it for 2 reasons. If you're a general contractor, 1, you need to find out if your business is structured for success. And if you're a general contractor and you have subcontractors, you may want to ask this question: are your subs structured for success or structured for failure? And if you would like to evaluate your business to see if it's designed for success, the next step is to apply for a business evaluation call with my team. We'll go through these 5 root causes of failure, evaluate your business, and then give you some pointers, highlight the red flags, the early indicators that you may want to focus your energy on. And if it makes sense, we can talk through the details of our Systematize Your Construction Business program that will ensure it is structured for success. If you would like to schedule your free business evaluation, go to constructionleadingedge.com/apply, APPLY, or simply go to our website, constructionleadingedge.com, and tap the Apply Now button. Now, let's get back to the episode.
When my time got freed up, there was another one of those things, like those reactive phone calls, the distractions and things like that. Like, even when my team was capable, I had kind of ingrained this habit that if you're in doubt, call me and I'll give you the solution, instead of empowering them to come up with the solution themselves. And I had to basically allocate my time, block out my time, and create the CEO schedule that works for me. So with that free time, I had to make sure that I'm now not sabotaging myself and going back and collecting that 80% stuff again. I have to make sure that I'm still giving away more and more and more. Whatever we've eliminated is fantastic, but then whatever's left now needs to be delegated to my construction manager, to my pre-construction manager, to subcontractors, to whoever else. And blocking out times where now I can focus on the 20%, which is, what do we want to do next in terms of development and stuff. That was probably a big mindset shift.
Yeah, that's important. What's next is you need to have something that's next. Otherwise, once you let go of things and you have nothing else to go toward, you're likely to just pick that stuff back up and just keep doing it. So it's really important to have something that you're stepping toward, something you're moving toward that requires. That's another benefit of the 10X vision. Big, hairy, audacious goals. they cause you to think big, and they give you something else to do once you get out of day-to-day firefighting. Yep.
Yeah. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a dollar amount or whatever, right? Like if you want to have an impact in your community or in terms of contribution, if there's something that's real close to your heart, like the 10X for me was being more present at home with my family. Like when I have a young family, something I'm never going to get the chance to do that again. I can't do that 10 years from now. It's just not going to be around. And trying to figure out, all right, how do I clear out my time to do that? It's not the time to kind of get 10x the revenue or 10x the profit or whatever. That's fine, but there's no emotional need. So when it connects well mentally, you kind of push a bit harder for it. You can probably talk a bit about the whole mental aspect of it, Leyah. I'm assuming that was probably your favorite part in the book.
It was. In fact, as I'm listening to the conversation between the two of you, so much of what you're sharing, there was a pretty big chunk of the book that talks about a lot about mindset and different concepts of mindset and how we really need to align our mindset with a 10x thinking to actually reach that 10x. And one of those, I think it's an entire chapter, actually talks about embracing abundance and rejecting scarcity. And the things that you were just talking about with getting paid for estimates, that is, we can get caught up in that scarcity pretty darn quick. And there's a lot of fear in there. And in fact, some people might call this woo-woo, but it is even proven towards the end of the book that these different emotions carry a vibration. And fear is really low on that list. And so when we are set in a place of abundance and in a place of hope and in a place of positivity, we're vibrating at a much higher level and we draw some of these things to us. And so that's a big part of it is, are we going to reject that scarcity? Are we going to reject that that's not going to be a problem, that people are going to want to work with us because we're providing value? And I think that's another important part of this is 10X isn't about quantity. It's about quality. And as we are embracing this, whether you're a construction business owner or other type of business owner, or just a person wanting to be better, we need to think about some of these things. And that's a big part of it is embracing that abundance. There's two things when he talked about mindset in here that really stood out to me. And one of them was your unique ability. And I think this is one, as I was reading this, I thought, is this just something that I've always been fascinated with? Or does everybody wonder, like, what is my unique ability? Because I'm constantly thinking about that. And I'm like, well, what is it? Does someone else know? Because I'm not sure. So I'm always looking for it. But in this book, he says...
Todd, it's his dance moves.
Oh, it's Todd's dance moves?
It's a little known secret. It's true.
Definitely unique.
I don't know that I would call it an ability. Unique.
In the book, he talks about your unique ability. And he says, this is how you create value and wealth that is unique and specialized. It's your radically unique way of doing what you do, such that no one else can compete with you, even if they wanted to. Your unique ability is also your unique vision and purpose, your why for what you're doing. I like that short paragraph because I think it sums it up really nicely, kind of encompasses everything about that. It's your vision, it's your focus, it's your why, it's something only you can do and that you can provide value. And I think that's an important part of this is we have to really understand ourselves. We have to have that self-awareness to see, well, what is it that I'm really, really good at? And I've noticed in working with some of our clients that they want to hold on to everything, but they're really good at this part right here, right? Monish, I know you've already shared that story of how you wanted to hold on to everything, but you finally unplugged because you recognized where your unique ability was. And the minute you unhinged from all of that, it opened up possibilities for everybody on your team, not just you. And so not only did it 10X for you, but it opened up for everyone to 10X, your whole business to 10X. And that's what I think is cool about this is when we can fully embrace that, we create this abundance, right? We embrace that abundance, and that's a different type of energy that we're engaging with versus the scarcity. And it tends to flow out. And we see this. I know, Monish, you've seen this with our clients. The ones that totally embrace this abundance, their whole team shifts and changes. And the ones that are still holding on so tight to everything that they need to do, which is that scarcity, stuff just doesn't really change. It doesn't seem to really shift and move forward in the way that they would like with their whole team. So that really stood out to me, that part of the book. And then the second part of that is what they call the gap versus gain. In fact, they wrote a book about it. I am going to forget the name of that book. But I want to just explain really quickly this, because I think this is an important part too, especially when you're on the verge of embracing something 10x. We have to really, really decide, okay, am I in the gap or am I in the gain? So what does that mean? In the gap is what he explains. It's a lens by which you measure what is against what could be. In the gap, you're measuring what is against what you believe you should be. When you're in the gap, you're measuring yourself or your situation against an ideal. So you're measuring yourself and judging yourself pretty harshly. And if you are a high achiever, it's probably many of us, you've experienced this, right? I know Todd and Monish, please don't leave me out here on my own. You guys have experienced this, right? So it's easy to get caught in the gap. It's easy to look at that and express an ideal of what you should have done or should be. And if you're not there yet, you can get stuck in that and spiral pretty quick. Versus the gain. And this really stood out to me. I liked this a lot. When you're in the gain, you're never measuring yourself against anything external. You're only measuring yourself against yourself. More directly, you're measuring yourself against where you were before. I think that's a big distinction. And I think it's extremely important if we want to go from a 2x thinking to a 10x thinking. We have to recognize those wins. And this is something that I know we're always encouraging our clients to do, even ourselves to do, is to recognize the wins, recognize the good things that are happening, and even see, hey, 2 months ago, where were you? Last week, where were you? What have you done? What are some of the things that you've accomplished? And one of the suggestions he makes in this book is every day, write down 3 things. What were 3 wins for the day? Even if it was getting out of bed, which some of us have those days where that's a hard thing. But it's really doing a self-evaluation. And am I in the gap? Am I in the gain? Am I in scarcity? Am I in abundance? And if we are in that gap or in that scarcity, we can't do 10x. It's impossible. So it really does require a shift. And a big way of stepping into the gain is gratitude. We talk about that a lot here.
Yeah, I want to talk about scarcity. So there are probably people listening thinking, well, that's me. Things are scarce, right? There's not enough time. There's not enough money, never enough customers, never enough people. There's never enough labor. There's just never enough. Mm-hmm. And they're like, that's a fact. I live in a scarce world. And what you're suggesting is that that's a mindset. That's a lens. And what you have to understand is, like, psychologists have determined that we have a negative bias. That's just how we're hardwired by nature to have a scarcity mindset. Mm-hmm. There's never enough. There's not enough food. There's not enough water. There's not enough resources. So by nature, by default, you're going to be in that scarcity mindset, and that's not a good place to live. I've spent a lot of time living in that gap, and I found that that's where frustration lives. It's in this gap between reality and this ideal or this fantasy land that you're comparing your current situation to. That's the problem. It's not the reality you're dealing with. It's the gap between your reality and this non-existent fantasy land you're comparing it to. So if you want to live in the gain, you compare yourself to yourself in the past. And I really think that if you want to get into an abundance mindset, it starts with living in the gain. And that is gratitude. You can literally, this is not woo-woo, metaphysical stuff. This is neurological. You can rewire your brain by being grateful, by spending time writing down things you're grateful for, focusing on the positive. Yeah, I have to do it every day. I have stacks of journals where I write for 10 minutes, 15 minutes. Sometimes if I'm in that scarcity mindset, I got to spend a lot of time in gratitude to try to get out of it. And it is, and so humans by nature have that scarce negativity bias. And it seems like contractors have a special gift at finding what's wrong. This auditor 100%. Mentality. So it is a choice you can make. You can change. And if you want to get out of where you're at, you have to change. And it starts, in my opinion, a great place to start is gratitude. So I'm really glad you brought that up, Leyah.
The other thing I was just thinking about as well, there's oftentimes when I've, reflected and been grateful, I've been grateful for things that have worked out for me, sort of thing. I've been, we're all guilty of it. We're quite quick to criticize ourselves and look at what we did wrong, what we didn't do well enough and things like that. But very seldom do we actually compliment ourselves. Like if you look back and look at, as an individual, how much you've achieved and overcome, it's quite a feat, right? But we never really focus on that. We just focus on what didn't work out, what we didn't do right, or things that just kind of by chance happened to us. And there's no such thing as chance. I don't really believe in luck. I feel like, you make your own luck essentially. But I wanted to quote, there's chapter 4 of the book that says, uncover your 10x past to clarify your 10x future, because you've done it before, right? So it literally says you've done it before and you'll do it again. And there's a quote by Steve Jobs, and he says, you can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking backwards. So you have to trust that the dots will somehow connect in your future. You have to trust in something, your gut, destiny, life, karma, whatever, because believing that the dots will connect down the road will give you the confidence to follow your heart, even when it leads you off the well-worn path. And I think in terms of construction, there's always, most of us have come up through the trades, right? Like we started quite young on site, pushing a broom or whatever, and you've kind of worked your way up. And it's easy to get stuck in this mentality that like, I just have to keep doing this. And when you're in the game, you can kind of think of, you know what, I'm going to hire someone to replace what my 80% is. And if it doesn't work out, I'll figure it out. It's always, I've got the confidence that 3 months out, if this person doesn't work out, I can always pick up the pieces and make do. But if this person works out, which is obviously a higher probability, it's going to free me up quite substantially. So it's worth taking that risk. It's worth making that leap, because you've got to, at the end of the day, look back and go, I've done this full time, overtime, really. I can always just go back in and fix stuff if I need to. But if I don't hire someone else, I'm going to be stuck here forever. And that's where it's important to not just be grateful for the opportunities that I've had, but also what I've done with those opportunities, how I've made the most of them. Because I know any failures, I can just fix most failures anyway, or learn from them moving forward.
Yeah, I think it also, it points back to like the victim mentality or not. And anytime, if we're being really honest, we have to be honest. If we're in that scarcity mode, we're also playing the victim. And in that moment, we can make a decision, because it's also, I think, human nature to fall into victim mode, because somehow that feels comforting and okay to just be like, everything happened to me. And it wasn't any of my fault at all. But the moment we can make a decision and say, nope, I'm not a victim. I take full ownership for all of this. You're empowered, immediately empowered. And it shifts you right back into that abundance. And I also, the thing that I like about the gain, which Monish alluded to, is you're looking at every single thing in your past and you're looking at it and seeing, what did I gain from this? And let's be honest, there are crappy things that happen that we genuinely are victims to sometimes. But are you going to hold on to that? Or are you going to look at that and think, what did I learn from this? How was I more empathetic and compassionate with someone else that maybe experienced something like this? There's always an opportunity to fall really quickly into that gap in those situations, or we can step in and be empowered into the gain. And that's what I like, is we always have a choice.
Mm-hmm. And asking the right questions and going, I completely agree with that victim mentality. And, I've seen that working with people and stuff like that. And our clients in the CEO Alliance, and even people that I've met up with at our live advance meetup last year, the mentality is so different, where it's like, yeah, things are happening, bad things are happening. What can we do? What can we do to like fix it, or, take advantage of it even? Last year when we did that meetup in Lexington, I remember Phil Coe, one of our clients, last year was, pretty bad for short-term rentals and things like that. And there was also an opportunity in the market where new clients didn't have temporary long-term accommodation while their new homes were being built. And Phil took his short-term rentals and put them in the contract for his custom new homes and told his clients that, hey, part of the package is you get a house to live in while we're building your house. And it was genius. And everyone else, taking notes and going, yep, I'm going to do this when I get home. And it was incredible being in that environment with those like-minded people, because that victim mentality, the whole misery loves company. If you're hanging out with people that 4 out of 5 people are just victims or like to be victims, because some people do, you're going to end up having that voice in your head as well. Whereas if you hang out with other people that are just like, yeah, this happened, how can I make the most of it? What's the opportunity here? Because you're either looking for opportunities or you're looking for excuses.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. It really, you can tell an abundance mindset from a scarcity mindset by the questions people ask, right? The scarcity mindset asks questions like, well, why can't I, or why didn't this happen? Or why is everybody against me? Why? Lots of why questions. And the abundance mindset will ask questions like, what would it take? What would it take? Or what's the opportunity here? Every difficulty, every bit of adversity has a seed of opportunity baked into it. So what's the opportunity here? Man, what an empowered, a much more empowered mindset that is. Like during COVID, everybody was scared. There were opportunities there. When lumber prices skyrocketed, there were opportunities created. When interest rates went up, people have successfully predicted 27 of the last 0 construction collapses in the last 3 years, right? Every few months, construction's going to come to an end. The housing market's going to crash. It's going to happen again, and it just never happens. And those scarcity, fear-based mindset people are they're missing opportunities. So yeah, there are opportunities out there, and it's all about the way you look at it. It's the lens through which you see the world.
Isn't the world supposed to end almost every year? There's a group of people that are like, yep, this is 5,000 years ago. It was this year, this date, the world's ending. You just wake up the next day and go to work. It's like nothing changed.
I remember Y2K back in 2000. Everything was supposed to collapse because computers couldn't. They had 2-digit dates, and they talked about the impending collapse of everything for like a year and a half. And January 1st, 2000, everything was just fine. And look at what we've come through. This is, I think, looking at like the economy from a gain perspective, right? If you're ever wondering, what's going to happen? Well, look at what we've come through in the last 3 years. Just look at what the construction industry has come through in the last 3 years. Look, even 2008, people survived that. That was bad. That was really, really bad, but people survived it. And just look at how much we've come through. And it really is very helpful to look backwards at your own development, at your own progress, at your company, at the construction industry as a whole. We're going to be okay. Things are going to be okay. Yeah.
And so it's an expected, I'll just add a little bit more to that. It's an expected thing that the business cycle does go down, right?
Yeah.
But there's still opportunities in that. And it's not just, I suppose, business, it's like life cycle as well. Because 2008 was when I just finished school a couple of years before that, and I just started out in my career. And going through my carpentry apprenticeship then, I learned very quickly that this is inevitable. This sort of cycle is going to happen again. And I need to educate myself so that I've got more opportunities in the future, right? And if we didn't have that crash, I don't think I got my GC license when I was 22. There was no way that would have happened if there wasn't a recession. So really, that recession was probably the most profitable thing that's ever happened to me in the long run. And, it's always looking for, all right, how do we make the most of this? Not, woe is me, the world's over. And
You know, in the book, there's actually a term called psychological flexibility, which is exactly what you're describing, Monish. And he says, essentially, psychological flexibility is moving toward chosen goals, even when it's emotionally difficult. You acknowledge and accept your emotions, but they don't control you. So you're able to respond to obstacles successfully in a way that's congruent with your personal standards. It's essentially what you're just talking about right there.
Been doing the psychological splits.
Yeah, it really is about mindset. It's about, here's the deal. It's not what happens to you. It's not what happens to us. It's the story we tell ourselves about what that means. And we get to choose the story. This was revolutionary for me. I read a book called The Obstacle is the Way by Ryan Holiday. It's about Stoic philosophy. And I remember reading the book, and I got to that part, and out loud I said, holy shit, this changes everything. Like, this just changes everything, because I get to choose the story that I tell myself. I get to choose. Am I going to be a victim? Am I going to be empowered? Am I going to look for opportunities? I get to choose. It's up to me. And that was revolutionary for me. Yeah. So Monish, what about you? I've covered mine. Leyah's covered her favorite parts. Are there any other favorite parts of the book that you want to cover?
I think everything really, but it was quite interesting. You get to the end, and at the end of each chapter through each chapter, he's got a few questions for you to answer and journal and reflect upon. But going through, there's just so much. I tend to daydream a lot. I really struggle to finish books because I start reading, and if something's really good, my mind just wanders off on that tangent. But eventually, when I did get to the end of the book, and it asked me a question which it asked me pretty early on, but what is my 10x vision? And it's like every time I pick something, it's like, no, that's actually not good enough. Like you can probably do better and think about it a bit better and things like that. So it's one of those things that I'm probably going to keep going back to the book to learn more and more and more. This is why I challenged you when you said it's not easy, because I found like certain things are probably easier. And I'm like, why am I not doing that already? Yes, like not charging for estimates. It was like, why didn't I do this years ago? Didn't make any sense. But yeah, I think the whole book's a lot of value, and people listening probably pick up a copy. You can get the audiobook. I normally listen to audiobooks, but I made a lot of notes and stuff like that in this book. It was quite handy. And there's a whole bunch of resources that they give you links to at the end as well.
Yeah, I think there's a website you can go to and download some worksheets and some other resources. So fantastic book. 10x is easier than 2x. Highly recommend you get the book. Go back to it. Keep it on your desk. If your experience is anything like mine, it challenged me. It's not one of these. A lot of business books have like one or two things, little nuggets in there, and the rest is just fluff. This is just jam-packed with gold nuggets. So ultimately, as with anything, information is not the key, right? So you could read this book, be able to quote it, scripture and verse, but information alone is useless, right? As I like to say, if it were all about information, if all it took was access to information, then everybody would be driving Lamborghinis and have six-pack abs, right? But it's about implementation, and that's the hard part. Whether it's a book, an online course, some change you want to make in your business, you want to lose weight, get in better shape, fix a relationship, it comes down to implementation. So I'm curious, what have you all found in your work to be the keys to people actually seeing things show up in their life, where they encounter a new piece of information, they learn something, and then it actually shows up in their life? What are a couple of the keys to implementing and turning information into reality? What have you seen, Leyah?
The first thing that pops in my mind is belief, like the personal belief of, can I do this? Will this work? We hold so much power in the thoughts that we have and the things that we choose to believe. And so I think that's one of the first things. And I've even seen this for sure in my own life, whether or not I choose to believe something and then go after it. And that's happened many times with 10X in my life. But I've seen it for sure with my clients. The clients that I know come in and believe they can do it and believe it's going to work and change in their business, they're typically the ones who implement all the things that we teach them and that we coach them on. And then we have some other clients that maybe don't believe that or are a little bit apprehensive about the process of what we're providing, or this has never worked in the past. Why is it going to work now? And typically they never even step over into that implementation side. So I think that's probably one of the first things, is that belief.
Yeah. What about you, Monish?
I think it's identifying, if you've got those big, hairy, audacious goals, visions, whatever, it's identifying what are your limits and what do you need to get beyond those limits? Because like I said, you can't just work harder, work for longer and expect to get there, right? So one of the big things, and I guess it's a shameless plug, but it was when I contacted you. So I'd been listening to the Construction Leading Edge podcast, I think it was since 2014 or whenever it first came out. And I didn't contact you until 2021. And when we went through the SYCB program and restructured that, like I've been to uni, I've done a construction management degree and everything. Like I had most of the tools, but having someone say, all right, this is the precise stuff you need to work on this week, and then the week after, and then the week after, and going, all right, man, put it in the business, start implementing, start doing it, because it's never going to be finished. And then actually doing it. And part of that as well was, a lot of it was delegation, right? So me actually trusting my team and also hiring new people, like taking those actions. Because you have this fear that, you're spending a lot of money. Like you just keep thinking you're spending a lot of money. But if your goal is to improve profits and you're at your limit, how are you going to improve profits? Right? And it's only by delegation or spending some or investing it, really. Invest it in a course, invest it in people, invest it in equipment, invest it in programs like Co-Construct or Builder-Trend or Procore or whatever. Invest it in things that actually allow you to get closer to the 10X instead of just being stuck and doing those things. And I think a big part as well is the environment that you want to be a part of. Like we spoke about the victim mentality. Like again, going back to, the live meetup last year, the area that we were in, I remember saying this to you the next morning. I was like, I'd like to develop something like this. I'd like to develop a business park where there's a hotel, there's this and this and that, and that to me is probably like 100x vision. But since then, I'm like, how do I get there? And I can't get there if I just keep feeling sorry for myself, or if I'm hanging out with people who aren't smarter than me. I need people who are going to teach me how I can actually make those happen. People that have either done it themselves or know people that have. And we've seen the guys in the CEO Alliance, like there's no victim mentality whatsoever. Like I said before, everyone's just like, how do we get things done? And when you're a part of that, even though I'm the coach in that scenario, I can't help but be motivated. So I'll get off a call and be like, man, these guys are just crushing it. I need to as well, because I can't just be, a part of this and not contribute. I've got to be making sure that I'm bettering myself, improving myself, and actually crushing my goals too, so I can actually belong in that sort of group. So just, gives you a bit better drive. So you're right, like the knowledge is there, but you've got to implement. And I think accountability is a key factor there as well. Find yourself a group that holds you accountable.
Yeah. Have iron sharpens iron, a rising tide raises all boats. You are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. They're all true. So if you want to change your situation, you got to change your mindset. You may have to change your environment. You need to get around different people, get in a group, find a system. My advice for you is if you're a construction business owner and you want to 10x your business, you want to make a dramatic change in your business, then find somebody who has a proven system and work with them. right? So we have a system that has worked for a lot of people, the Systematize Your Construction Business program. It is a very specific framework that people are using to 10x their business and 10x their life, helping them focus on their 20%, putting them in the right environment, in a group that will drive them. You get this collective energy, and then have a specific framework to follow instead of trying to figure it all out on your own and then figure out what sequence. The SYCB program, in my opinion, is a great way for you to help you 10x your business. Just follow the steps. It's proven, it works. So 2 things I would share if you're interested in that. If you want to hear from some of our clients talking about their experience, go to constructionleadingedge.com/results. You'll be able to listen to them talk about their experience, how life was before, some of the problems they were dealing with, and how life is now, and how it's been impacted. And then if you would like this team's help to systematize your business, to 10x your business and take it to the next level, then the first step would be to schedule a call. And you can do that by going to constructionleadingedge.com/apply. APPLY, or just go to constructionleadingedge.com and you'll see the Apply Now button in the top right corner. And we would love to chat about how we can help you systematize your business. So, Monish, thanks for giving us the book report assignments. And Leyah, thanks for sharing everything that you did. This has been a pretty fascinating book, so I highly recommend everybody do that. And anything else that we need to cover before we wrap up, Monish?
Yeah, I've got one last thought to share with people. Basically, a question to ask yourself: are you a business owner, or are you a project manager, or an accountant, or a carpenter, or a super, or are you all 5? I want you to ask yourself, which one are you? Because that's probably the start of figuring out what is your 80-20.
Yep. Good stuff. Leyah, any last words?
I think Monish stole the show on that one. That was a good question.
All right. Well, thanks to you guys for everything you do. And folks, thanks for listening to the podcast. Whatever you do, take some action. Take some action. Order the book on Amazon. Read a chapter. Take action. Do something. And start moving toward 10xing your business. And we'll see you guys next time. Thanks.
Hey, it's Todd here. And one more thing before you go. Look, if you own a construction business and you want to put the right systems in place so you can either scale it up, maybe you want to step away from it, be able to take a proper vacation, maybe you want to sell it someday, maybe you just want to have more freedom, or maybe make it more profitable, or maybe you just want to get out of constant firefighting mode and make your phone stop ringing all the time. You really have 3 options if you want to make a meaningful change in your business. Option 1 is do nothing. Status quo, keep doing the same things, getting the same results. Option 2, you can DIY it. You can do it yourself. You can reinvent the wheel. You can read books, listen to podcasts, try to piece together a solution, use trial and error. Or option number 3, if you want meaningful change, is to find a proven system that delivers the results you're looking for. Sort of like if you use software for project management or for your bookkeeping, I assume you probably didn't try to code your own software. You found a proven system that delivered the results you're looking for, right? Well, if you're looking for a proven system to systematize your business, we've helped hundreds of construction business owners implement our systems in their business, specifically our nail the handoff pre-construction process in their business. It works for home builders, remodelers, commercial general contractors. It also works really well for trade contractors like electricians, concrete contractors, site, utility, plumbing. And it's part of our Systematize Your Construction Business program. So if you want to see what systematizing your business looks like, what nailing the handoff looks like, and the positive side effects that come with that, then the next step would be to schedule a free business evaluation call with my team. And you could do that by going to constructionleadingedge.com/apply, APPLY, or just go to our website, constructionleadingedge.com, and tap the Apply Now button. You'll learn about the 5-step process we've helped hundreds of people implement to systematize their construction business. Most importantly, you'll get an objective third-party evaluation of your business to answer one really big question. Is your business designed to fail, or is it designed to succeed? So let me ask you this. If your business was unintentionally designed to fail, when would you rather find out? Now, while there's time to do something about it, or later on when it's maybe too late? This business evaluation call is totally free. There are no strings attached, no pressure. And it could be the best hour you've spent working on your business in a long time. So our schedule fills up pretty quickly. So if you're interested, go over to constructionleadingedge.com/apply, or go to constructionleadingedge.com and tap the Apply Now button to book your business evaluation call. Hey, thanks for listening. I hope you got value out of this podcast. If you could take a moment, if you did, and leave a rating or a review, or share this with somebody who needs to hear it, I would appreciate it. Todd Dawalt from Construction Leading Edge. Thanks so much, and we'll see you next time.